Agent Twilight, an infamous spy who has a laundry list of successful missions that he's completed, and he's one of the smartest and most skilled spies to have ever lived. He's also a single bachelor who's also a father who's also married. And today he's going to try and add another W to that list of missions. His current mission, rescue the president's daughter. I'll be slamming together two franchises you probably wouldn't normally see together, Spy Family and Resident Evil. And we'll go through Twilight's, or if you would prefer, Loid Forager's skills and abilities, and seeing if he has what it takes to make it through all the horrors that await him in Resident Evil 4. Now, there are some similarities between Leon and Loid in terms of training and combat feats, but also many differences that set Loid apart from Leon. But before we get into that, just who is Loid Forager? Well, his spy name is Twilight, and he works for an agency called the Westelia Intelligence Eastern Focus Division, otherwise known as WISE. And he takes on missions to preserve the peace between nations, but on a personal level, to make sure kids don't have to grow up the same way he did, with tough and traumatic childhoods. And speaking of kids, he has an adopted daughter named Anya, who is also a telepath, and he also has a fake wife named Yor Briar, who's also an assassin.
Hello, nurse!
He has this family as a cover-up for his mission in the Spy Family series. And as a spy, Loid is an expert at infiltration and intelligence gathering, and also data analyzing. Now, you may think that's not a big deal, most spies have to be good at this, but Loid's better than most. For instance, Loid has a photographic memory and can remember the smallest of details even after perusing through thousands of documents, and he'll never forget anything. When he first met Yor through a casual bump-in, he was able to figure out who she was after going through, in his head mind you, the hundreds of files of every single suitable woman who was eligible to become his wife. He also memorized every detail of a kidnapper's daughter down to, and I quote, every mole on her body. Loid is also able to tell when something has been tampered with instantly. Those same kidnappers I just mentioned waited in his home, and Loid knew exactly what was wrong upon just looking at his door. That was still intact, by the way, and in perfect condition. He knew they were inside waiting to ambush him. He also identified and could name and differentiate each of the over 200 individual penguins at a zoo just by observing their dietary habits. It's insane how good his memory and deduction skills are. Loid, also being a spy, is a master of manipulation, aka lying out his ass, and makes the best and most ridiculously detailed disguises. He's been able to fool anybody with his disguises, not only because they're perfect, but he can also match how their voice and speech patterns are. To put it into perspective, of all the missions Loid has participated in and all the enemies he's made, not a single one knows what he actually looks like. As for combat and physical abilities, Loid has gone through advanced combat training and is able to take out multiple enemies by himself without even taking a hit or even being seen. His hand-to-hand combat potential is probably only outdone by his wife, who's an assassin, and I swear she's taken the T-virus because her feats for a human are insane. Loid is also a parkour master and can jump between obstacles efficiently without any severe loss in stamina. He also has ridiculously good reaction and speed feats. For instance, he once entered an underground tennis tournament, and while playing could focus on the game while dodging rubber bullets being shot at him from multiple angles. And he made it look like he was just playing regular tennis and was never even grazed. Loid is also an expert marksman, and his go-to weapon is his handgun that looks to be some kind of hybrid between a Luger and a Walter. He can also use any weapon with advanced ability, which is one of his many strengths. Loid can learn how to be a master at anything within a short span of time, and he's also good at disarming bombs, forgery, reading lips, lockpicking, and is also a master chef. However, being a dad is the one thing he just can't seem to master as easily. I guess even the best spies have to read Parenting for Dummies. Now, with most of his skills explained, let's drop him into the action. Loid will have received his mission from his headquarters and would be given instructions to set out immediately and meet up with two officers who will escort him to Ashley's last known location. He'll tell Yor and Anya that he has to go overseas for work, but not to worry because he'll be back and bring peanuts for Anya. Anya will know he's full of shit but Yor will just smile and wave him off. So Loid sets out and meets up with the two officers. As for the gameplay that you're about to see on screen soon, please know Loid personally asked me not to show his face and made a very convincing Leon Kennedy disguise. But make no mistake, that's Loid you're seeing on screen right now. Now, as Loid is traveling with the two officers, he tries to get as much info as they can provide about the area, and that's when one of the officers has to take a potty break. After the officer is abducted for trying to go number 1, number 2 asks Loid to go look for him. At first, Loid surveys the area and takes in everything he can while tracking the officer. When Loid stumbles upon the house and enters, from what he finds inside, he deduces that someone else is in here, so he's cautious. He finds the other officer dead and is attacked, but Loid already had seen this coming and fights back and shoots his attacker in the chest, but he doesn't die. After a few more rounds, he finally goes down. Loid would begin to run through everything he could in his head, thinking about what could make them so durable. Before Loid leaves the building, he pulls out his briefcase and starts working on something just in case. As he heads back to the car, the officer is gone. Loid follows the pathway and sees bear traps along the path. Loid would be used to much more dangerous and better hidden traps than this, and wouldn't get caught in one even in a fight. As he makes his way to the gate, he opens it to find them burning the officer alive. Now, Loid has two options here. He could either kill everyone in the village, which he would be able to do with just his handgun and hand-to-hand skills. Loid has been shown to take out 38 armed men in less than 10 seconds each, so killing the entire village wouldn't be out of the question for him. But being the spy he is, he'd rather not make a fuss and sneak his way through. That's when Loid would put on his disguise that made him look like the first villager he encountered. Now he could walk through without being bothered. While looking around town, Loid would find treasures as well as extra ammunition and overthink things, and thoughts would run through his head like, why would they leave such valuables out? Is it some kind of trap? Maybe whatever is wrong with these people, they can't wear such jewelry because it affects their skin. Maybe these items are laced with poison, but I don't see any signs of tampering, or maybe they have invented a poison I can't detect. As he ponders all this, the bell rings and the villagers begin to leave. As he stealthily makes his way around going undetected, taking out what enemies he needs to, he comes across Louise and begins to ask him questions after taking off his mask to show him he's not one of them. As they are talking, Loid senses the smell of the big cheese before he enters the room. Since it's a small passageway, there's not much room to hide or get out, so he takes his stance to fight. Knowing what Loid now knows about the enemies and accounting for his height and weight, at first glance, Loid makes an assumption behind what he needs to hit and how hard in order to make this enemy go down. Loid puts multiple shots into Mendes' head, but he doesn't go down. When Mendes goes to attack Loid, he dodges him and begins to hit pressure points on his body to try and bring him down, but those don't work either. Loid doesn't understand because normally those points should have caused enough pain to bring down anyone to their knees. But because of the Plagas virus, it causes people who have been infected to have a high resistance to pain as well as increased strength. With not much room to move around and Loid running out of options, Mendes gets his hit in, but unlike Leon, it doesn't knock him out cold. Mendes, thinking he's knocked out, takes out the Plagas to infect Loid, but then Loid shoots the syringe out of Mendes' hands and runs around him to escape while grabbing the virus in the air. Loid runs back to a secure hiding spot and watches where Mendes takes Louise and follows them, since he knows Louise is withholding information that could be crucial to him. After Mendes leaves, Loid finds Louise chained up and asks about the president's daughter. Louise tells him about the church she's being kept at, and Loid asks him about what he knows about this parasite that Mendes wanted to inject into him. Louise, after being freed, promises to help Loid, but doesn't want to tell him everything just yet, and that's when Loid puts the gun to his head. While we do see a soft side to Loid in Spy Family, Loid does what needs to be done for his missions, and is also a master of interrogation. He tells Louise he doesn't want to do anything too drastic, but he won't let him leave until he gets all the information. Loid tells him, at the very least from your reaction to seeing this vial, and you being important enough to be one of the few who isn't a monster like everyone else here or dead, you know what this is, and you're smarter than you let on. So what is this, doctor? Louise asked if he was some kind of fortune teller, and if he'd get to have a go at a lot more senoritas before he bit the big one. Loid told him to stop wasting time with the gun still to his head. Louise explained what the Plagas virus was and that it was being tested on humans for illegal bioweapon purposes, and that he didn't want to cooperate anymore with them and was trying to escape the island. Loid knew if they tried to infect him with this, they probably already infected the president's daughter, and he needed to act quickly. As much as Loid wanted to keep an eye on Louise, he would just be dead weight and slow him down, so he cut ties with him after asking him how to cure it and left him. Now, Loid would make his way to the church, but being the expert lockpick he is, he wouldn't need to go hunting down for the key to get into the church, so he can easily get in and skip the whole lake segment with the boss. Once he enters and finds Ashley, he would explain the situation and begin to escort her out of the church. They would make their way past all the enemies, and eventually a mob would gather, chasing them down, and they would run into Louise again in a safe house. After some reintroductions, the house would become overrun. Loid has faced many opponents at once, and despite him being outnumbered, he would still come out on top. Working in a confined area would not be a big deal for him. After defeating all the enemies, they would run into the big cheese again, and Loid would be broken off from Ashley as the two fought. Like their previous encounter, Loid is faster and has better acrobatics than Chief Mendes, so hurting and avoiding him wouldn't be much of a problem. The real issue would come in his second form, but Loid could severely damage him just like Leon did when he holds the explosive barrels, and Loid's aim is impeccable. He was able to shoot the straps off of a bomb, off of a moving dog, without the dog even being wounded. Shooting a giant barrel isn't a problem. After Chief Mendes is defeated, they would then make their way to the castle and Napoleon Dynamite. After listening to Everybody Hates Raymond, they would be attacked and Loid would defeat the enemies easily. After going further into the castle, Loid would see the dungeon key and hear noises. Now this is another advantage for Loid. He can sense people and enemies around him. Think of it like a spidey sense in a way. Both he and Yor have this sense, and it can tell them where someone is, and it can also sense bloodlust. With his danger sense going off and looking at his surroundings, he noticed the floorboards by the key were unstable. Loid would lie flat while carefully shifting his weight so he could grab the key and get back without the floorboards giving away. He would then enter a giant room with many guards, and while protecting Ashley, he would be able to move through the room, keeping her safe. Then Ashley would become possessed by Sadler and split up Loid and Ashley. Then as Loid went off on his own, he wouldn't encounter Ada like Leon did, although Ada would be watching Loid from afar since he would be a useful distraction. The whole reason Ada even showed up is because she does have an interest in Leon since they do have history together. With Loid, she doesn't have any of that, so she has no reason to expose herself to Loid. Loid would have a sense that he's being tailed, but had to concentrate on finding Ashley. As Loid would look for her, he would also encounter the giants, but would use the same method of dispatching them like Leon did by using the cannon and killing it. After finding Ashley again, he would try to calm her down because he knew if she was panicked, it would make his mission harder. But he also thought of Anya while talking to her and thought about what he'd tell her in this situation. Louise would send a transmission to Loid telling him he has the suppressant for Ashley, and they would make their way through the courtyard. Now Loid has dealt with dogs before in combat, and with his speed and aiming, taking the dogs out would be child's play for him. Loid would then come upon the statue with the 3 missing heads, and the first head wouldn't be as tough to get as it was for Leon. The cloaked red enemy wouldn't be able to stun Loid like it could Leon, since Loid doesn't have a Plagas inside of him, so he could quickly take out all the enemies in the room and grab the statue head. Now with the next room and the armor, Ashley would be helping by using the blue flame to stun the enemies. Loid is also going to outrun these enemies since they move very slow. As they were stunned, Loid could melee the armor off of them, then proceed to kill the now exposed enemies. The last room with the stupid dining room puzzle, Loid would definitely solve it faster than I could. Thank God for the internet. Now after placing all the statue heads, the door would open and enemies would swarm in. Loid would notice the enemy at the top trying to pull the lever, and he would shoot him as he's doing it, but his body would fall on the lever and cage Loid in. He would tell Ashley to run as he kills the rest of the enemies in the room. After it was safe, he would unlock the door himself but wait for Ashley. He knew if he went chasing after her and she made it back to the area, she would panic by not seeing him there. So he decided to wait. After Ashley goes on her adventure and comes back, Loid would tell her to jump down and he would catch her. As Ashley Ashley jumps down, Verdugo would grab her quickly, but Loid would land every shot he could take, but Verdugo wouldn't be injured, and he'd make his way out of there with Ashley. Loid would give chase, and he would have to deal with the dreaded garage doors. Now, the garage doors can't see, but listen instead and attack in the direction that they hear the sound in. Loid, being a spy though, knows how to get around without making much noise. However, he couldn't just leave, as those enemies had the unicorn horns he needed to unlock the door. Loid would have to be quick when dealing with the regular enemies and use the bells in the room to get their attention while he shoots them in the back. Finally, after getting back to Ashley, Loid uses his listening device to hear what's going on instead of just barging in. He then disguises himself as one of the enemies and goes into the room. He quickly draws his gun before Salazar suspects anything and shoots him through his chest, but before he can kill him, Verdugo pins him to the floor. Salazar isn't dead from Loid's shot, so he knows he's probably a monster like Mendes was. Then Verdugo throws him into the pit where Loid grabs the chain before he hits the bottom. Loid's danger sense would activate while walking through the cavern, and he'd notice the nearly invisible bugs. These enemies aren't too tough though, and can be killed quite easily with a few shots from even a pistol. After getting farther, he would have to turn on the power to an elevator that would have to take him back up. But that's when an uncloaked Verdugo would attack him. Now, for Verdugo, you have to freeze him with these pipes that are scattered throughout the floor, then melee or shoot him while frozen to finally kill him. Or you could freeze him and run into the elevator screaming when it comes and avoid the fight altogether. Fighting Verdugo would take up a lot of resources, and Loid would be in a hurry to make it back to Ashley as quick as possible, so he may opt to just get to the elevator to save on time. At the top, he would encounter Louise, and Louise would travel with him to help get Ashley back. They would then have to fight off two giants. This wouldn't be too much trouble, as the exposed giant would be easier to kill with conventional weapons, and they would use the pitfall trap to kill the armored giant. After that, the two of them would have their minecart adventure before entering a room. Now, this is the room where Krauser kills Louise, but Loid, with his enhanced sense for bloodlust, would be able to pick up on the fact someone was in there. He would tell Louise to stay close to him. Krauser would throw the knife aiming at Louise, but Loid would shoot it out of the air. That's when Krauser would show up. Loid would tell him he read his file and knew he was skilled with knives. Loid would know in close quarters a knife would be better as well, so he used the same knife that was thrown at Louise to fight Krauser. Now, Loid has every advantage over Krauser in this fight in terms of both speed and strength. Loid picks up on patterns and motions instantly, and he would watch how Krauser fights while avoiding him looking for openings. But it's more than just that. Why Loid would win this fight is because Loid is wearing not just a bulletproof vest, but his dashing suit is also stab-proof. Which means Krauser's knife attacks will do little damage other than just giving Loid some minor pain. Even if Krauser were able to land a hit, it wouldn't mean anything. While Loid picks up on his fighting style, he would be able to outdo Krauser by parrying and slashing him, making him unable to fight back while going for certain tendons on his body that would incapacitate him. Krauser, being backed into a corner, would transform earlier than he did against Leon and begin to attack Loid all out. Now, Krauser's attacks can still be parried, but Loid would also maintain distance so he can shoot him when his guard wasn't up. And we also have to remember, despite Krauser's enhanced durability and strength, Leon, a normal person, was able to bring him down. Loid is pretty abnormal, as is the case sometimes with most anime characters. Loid's durability is extremely strong for tanking hits. For instance, when Yor got drunk and attacked Loid with a flurry of kicks, he was able to block and maintain himself. And to give you perspective on how strong Yor is, she was able to kick a speeding car off the road with one kick. And not only that, but in the official Japanese fanbook, it states from the creator of the manga, when asked how strong is Loid compared to Yor, he says, if it's a simple physical ability, Yor is 100 and Loid is around 60 to 70, which is still very strong when comparing the feats of Yor to Loid. Even Loid was able to tear the head off of a clock that was attached to a metal pole with just his brute physical strength. He also completely destroyed a hardwood table with just one punch. So Loid's physical strength shouldn't be looked down upon just because his wife is a monster. With Louise also alive, he could provide cover fire for Loid to land heavy blows on Krauser, and eventually he would get taken down. Loid would lecture Krauser about how he's a disappointment to his country and as a man before finally killing him. Now, with Loid more trusting of Louise, the two would make their way to the clock tower, and the two of them would clear the clock tower segment segment and make their way to Salazar. Instead of Krauser taking Ashley now, it would just be one of Sadler's regular henchmen, while Salazar tries to kill you and Louise off. Now, when Salazar transforms, there are a lot of areas to hide from his attacks. His attacks consist of spewing black goo, goo mines, and physical attacks. Loid would be quick enough to evade and shoot the mines Salazar leaves behind. Then he could shoot Salazar when the mouth of the monster opens. And now with Louise here and double the firepower, bringing down Salazar would be much faster than normal. And now with Napoleon blown apart, Loid and Louise would get to the speedboat to chase after Ashley. The keys would be missing, and that's when Ada would show up with them. Louise, knowing who Ada is and what she's after, would tell her if she helps get Ashley back, then she'll get what was promised to her. Ada, knowing that she needs the amber and that she couldn't take on Loid, let alone with Louise, she would agree for now. They make it to the island and spot Ashley being taken inside somewhere. Ada splits off and says she'll find her own way in and that she's better off working alone. Loid goes with Louise to get Ashley and find where they're keeping her. They then encounter the Regenerators, who can constantly grow back when being hurt. These enemies are a nightmare to take down, but if they find the biosensor scope, they can attack certain areas to kill the Regenerators without any worry of them, well, regenerating. If not, they can still avoid them while making their way to Ashley. These enemies can still be attacked with knives, and if they do end up grabbing you, you can stun them for a bit by knifing them. Once they find Ashley, they try and get her out of there, but Sadler stops them by controlling Ashley again. Sadler brings in a bunch of guards to attack Loid and Louise and flees with Ashley. After dispatching the enemies, Loid and Louise follow Ashley, and when they make it outside, Mike shows up to give them cover fire. Apparently, those in the know about Loid's mission were able to pick up a beacon signal and learn the location of Loid. Loid said to himself that he never sent a transmission, so he thought it may have been Ada who found a way to broadcast his position from one of the towers. Eventually, they make it to Ashley, however Mike was attacked by a bug's life and goes down. When Loid gets in, he grabs Ashley and runs for it. Louise stays behind to slow down Sadler instead of Ada this time, and Loid rushes Ashley to the lab where he destroys the Plagas inside of her. With the Plagas dead, they can finally focus on leaving the island. As they make their way out, they see Louise tied up. It was Ada before, but since Loid and Ashley don't have an attachment to Ada, Sadler ties up Louise to draw them out. Loid is focused on the mission, and even though he thinks Louise is a good person, he needs to focus on getting Ashley back to the president. Ashley refuses to leave without Louise and tells Loid to save him. Loid jumps down and frees Louise, and Ada joins them in the final battle with Sadler. Now, we've gone over how good Loid's aim is because it will be particularly useful here. For Sadler, you have to attack the eyeballs on his body to damage him. There are also explosive canisters to blow up when he gets near them. It's pretty basic in terms of what you need to do, so while dodging, Loid would just need to constantly shoot Sadler until he's weakened and goes into his second state. When that happens, Ada would throw a rocket launcher to Loid, and with that shot, it opens up Sadler to be killed by Loid once and for all. Ada tells Loid it's been a pleasure and gets on her helicopter and throws Loid keys to the speedboat. Louise, Ashley, and Loid begin to make their way off the island by making a break for the speeder. It's a tight fit, but all three get on and they ride out of there and everyone makes it out safely. Louise panics for a moment though because he doesn't have the amber and realizes Ada must have taken it during the fight with Sadler. Loid, still being focused on the mission, says we still need to get her home. And after Ashley asks Loid if he would want to be assigned to her detail, Loid simply states, "I don't have the time, I'm married." With Sadler defeated and the president's daughter cured and healthy, the mission was accomplished. Loid went back home, and when Yor and Anya asked him about what had happened to him, he calmly said, "There was a very wealthy patient that needed some serious therapy, and when we helped him, his mind was blown wide open." Anya read his mind and was disgusted, and she almost threw up. Then Yor said she made dinner and she threw up. And there you have it. With the intelligence, physical prowess, weapons mastery, and all of his other skills, Loid is more than capable to pull off this mission. Loid has been able to fight off multiple highly trained agents and criminals. While the infected villagers and monsters had high durability, they were lacking in critical thinking, which made them easier to predict and maneuver around in a fight. The biggest issue was keeping Ashley safe, but with Loid's ability to sense danger just as well as Yor can, he could completely change events that Leon couldn't, since Leon isn't as skilled as Loid when it comes to these things. And while Loid's exact age is unknown, we know that since his childhood he's undergone many traumatic things and has been trained for years and made a name for himself as the best spy in the agency. And while we do see Loid fumble around sometimes in Spy Family, it is purely because we see him getting attached to Anya and Yor, and clearly starts to develop feelings he normally never would. These may portray him to be weaker than he is, but when he's focused and doesn't have them around, he's very much Agent Twilight, and it reflects on his work in his missions. Sending him to the island to get Ashley is definitely a mission he can complete. And with that, Loid has again saved a nation and stopped an international incident. But what do you guys think though? Do you think Loid might have handled anything differently? Do you think he wouldn't be able to pull this off? Or should I have made this video about Yor instead? Be sure to share your thoughts and I look forward to reading them. And I'll see you guys in the next weird crossover. Nath out. Hey everyone, thanks again for watching and I truly hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to check out any more of the other franchises I've crossed over, click on the video on screen now. I always have fun doing these and coming up with story points as well, so look forward to my next Could They Survive video. Thanks again and have a great day.